Hey everybody, it's Jim of Animateducated. Today you're going to meet the Bookish Animator, also known as the real Julia McIntyre.
Hi, Jim. Thanks so much for having me on Animated Educated. I'm excited to chat with you about what I've been working on.
That's what she really looks like. Aha!
Hello.
Well, it's really nice to finally talk to you and see what you look like.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
real three-dimensional face.
there you go. So, how did you first get into animation before you went to college?
Probably similar story to a lot of people. I loved to draw as a kid, and I would draw very narratively. Like I wouldn't just draw, like if I was drawing a dog, I wouldn't just draw the dog. The dog would have a story, and these were the characters in the story and all of this kind of stuff. So I think it was a pretty easy transition, but when I was in high school, I was planning on going into optometry. I was really good at school, and so I was like, okay, because I've been told I was good at school, I should go into medical field, something like that. But I had a really wonderful art teacher who, in my senior year, she pulled me aside right before Christmas break, and it was the time when you're having to pick what you want to do in college. And so she said, "What are you going to do in college?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm going into optometry. I've got all my prerequisites. That's my plan." And so she said, "Okay, that's great. Have you considered art? Doing something with that? You seem like you really like it and you're pretty good at it, and I feel like you could do something with this." Um, and nobody had really told me that art was an option as a career. So she was kind of the one that put the like bug in my ear. And then by the end of Christmas break, I sat down to Christmas dinner with all of my family who were like, "Oh, and so how's your application for medical school going?" And I went, "I'm actually going to art school." So it was a big leap, but I was very lucky that I had a very supportive family who were like, "That's great. That sounds like something you will enjoy." And at least for my parents who had seen me grow up drawing constantly and writing stories and all of this kind of stuff, they were like, "We weren't that surprised."
Oh, so you don't come from a family of doctors or anything like that?
No, my mom is was a teacher, and my dad worked in tech. He worked at IBM when I was growing up. So similar kind of field, like computers and that kind of thing. And my mom actually taught uh, at IBM for a bit in the 90s, teaching code. So
Oh, yes.
more of a tech family.
So you went to college, you went to,
I'm originally from Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. So I'm the rectangle in the middle of Canada. And so I went to university just in my hometown. Um, so I did a 4-year Bachelor's of Arts, and then when I graduated, I went to Vancouver, and I went to Van Arts, and I did a my animation diploma there, which was specifically in Harmony and in 2D. So
and then from there you kind of you got a job, you got your dream job. You kind of tell us all about that in your YouTube video that you put out there.
yeah.
So how was that? Was that kind of, do you knew about it, or it's just one day you walked in and they said, "Hey, come on, why don't you come into the room here? We need to talk. HR, yeah, come here." Is it one of those things, or?
It was November of last year, so we're coming up on a year of us finding out. Uh, we got pulled into a meeting that was not a normally scheduled check-in meeting, and our head of animation was there, and so head of the whole studio animation, and he was like, "So we have some news, and I know you guys probably already know what I'm gonna say." And so he told us, all of our contracts, at least for the show that I was working on, ended mid-January. So he was like, when we get to January, there will be no more shows after that that we can roll you guys onto. And so unfortunately, I think our team had about 30 animators. So it was 30 of us all of a sudden knew that we weren't going to have jobs come the new year, which is scary and sad, because lots of my coworkers too had been working at that studio for years, and were kind of veterans of that studio. And I was fairly new comparatively to them. And I will say though that our head of animation did a really, in a terrible situation, did a very good job of letting us all know that these layoffs are not a reflection of you as an artist. It is not your fault that you are getting laid off. You didn't do anything wrong, which was very good, because I think a lot of us as artists, we tie so much of our self-worth to us being able to do our art. And so when you get laid off, it can feel like you have failed. So I do appreciate how well he handled such a really awful situation.
Mhm. That's tough when, yeah, you get let go and things are going pretty good, you know. So you did a lot of, now you were you building the rigs for the characters, or were you animating the rigs?
And I had learned how to rig in university. So I could rig, but I really wanted to animate. That was the dream job. So yeah, it was animating, and I started as a junior and I left as an intermediate. And um, it was it was my first job and like the dream job. So it was all kind of rolled into one.
So how is it going now with all the success of Instagram blowing up and all that?
And so it's been 10 years that I've been on Instagram. And the majority of that time, I had under 300 followers. And they were mostly like people I knew from school, or friends that I had in high school and things like that, or family members and things. So when I posted the original video saying, "Hey, I got laid off," one, as a perfectionist, it was a very scary video to make, just to admit, like, I was the one in high school that was like, I have these big dreams and this is what I'm going to go and do, and now I'm not doing it anymore. So it was scary to post that, but I wanted something that would hold me accountable to actually doing this project. And so I posted this video, not thinking anybody other than like the 200 something followers I had were gonna see it.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm an animator, and 6 months ago, I got laid off from my dream job. Let's rewind. I'd been working as an animator for over 2 years at a studio producing children's TV shows, and I was loving it. But then, in January, the industry took a bit of a dip, and I, along with my team, were unfortunately laid off. And suddenly, for the first time in my life, I had nothing to do. I wasn't in school, I didn't have a crazy 80-hour-a-week job, and I had no idea what to do with myself. So I started doing what I'd loved before university and working, reading books and drawing. And then one night, I woke up with a crazy idea. What if I animated covers from my favorite books? So here I am. I'm going to be posting new content on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, so if you love books and 2D animation, consider following along. We all got to start somewhere, right?
And then by that night, I had something like 500 followers. And so my husband and I went out for milkshakes, and we were like, this is so cool. Congrats to me. This is amazing. And while we were out, we were sitting in a booth in a restaurant drinking our milkshakes, and I opened Instagram and I had 700 followers. And we were sitting there watching the numbers climb, going, I think we may have celebrated a little too early. Like, and so the next morning I woke up and it was over 1,000, and they just kept going and going. And then it became like, oh, do I have any like personal information that is still on my Instagram? Should I be, double checking that I don't have the faces of family members on my profile, things like that? Because suddenly there's a lot of people here, and there's a lot of eyes on this thing that I created. But it just became so much bigger than I ever thought it was going to be. And so then I started like posting more videos and posting more book cover animations. And then people started asking for books and being like, you should read this book. Please animate this book. And I was like, now I have a community of people who are giving me book recommendations, who are tagging authors, being like, you should work with this person. And so the first month for sure was very overwhelming. I've now gotten to a point where the number has slowed down, which for me, who's quite anxious, it's a lot better for me as is like just not having it go so crazy, and every video that you post suddenly has, you know, thousands of people's eyes on it instantaneously. That feels a little bit better. And I've kind of now figured out what I'm doing a little bit more, because for the first month or so, I was just like kind of white knuckling it through, going, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I hope you like it. So I've now kind of figured out what I'm doing. I've got a little bit more consistency in how often I post, and kind of figuring out how to set boundaries with myself, because as a freelancer now, I don't have 9 to 5. Animation is never really 9 to 5, but you have a little bit of a separation between work and being not at work. But when your work can be on your phone, in your pocket all the time, you can constantly be connected to people talking about your work and things like that. It's very hard to not be working all of the time, which is how you get burnt out. So I'm learning to kind of try and give myself an end time for my day and say, okay, this is when I stop work, and this is when I do other things like eat. That's important too.
So do you have any advice for students out there that want to get into animation, especially at this time when things are kind of still a little rocky all over?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was really surprised by and really thankful for, is that I started getting messages from students asking the questions that I had been asking when I wanted to go into animation, like how do you figure out if you want to go into 2D or 3D? How do you pick schools? All of this kind of stuff. So it's been really nice getting to talk to people. That's one of my favorite parts. As far as advice goes, especially like right now where it's hard to get into a studio right now. I was very lucky in the fact that when I came out, we were kind of riding the boom of COVID, where everybody was finding work pretty easily. And so I think my advice would be, like, one of the things that really helped me was having a community. So if you're a student right now and you've got peers and classmates who also know how hard it is and who know what the industry is like, it's hard to explain to somebody outside how it feels. And so having that community of friends that you build while you're at school to complain about afterwards, or to they're going to be the first people that will, you know, I've got a Discord server that I've had since I was in university, where we still post like, hey, my studio just opened up 2 spots for animators. Is anybody looking for anything? Or I've got a friend that's doing a freelance project and they need some help. Does anybody want to message them? That's huge. And even into like your first year in a studio, I know at least for me, I was very apprehensive to ask questions my first year in a studio, because I didn't want anyone to think that I didn't know what I was doing. And so having, you know, friends that you went to school with that you can tap on the shoulder and be like, hey, I've run into this problem, or I've got this scene and it doesn't look right, but I don't know what I'm doing wrong, or Harmony's given me this weird error and I don't want them to think that I don't know what I'm doing. Having people that know animation and can support you, it's huge.
Yeah, we're all connected kind of thing. So if you do have a group of people, you can just, yeah, throw something out there. Hey, I need help, or hey, how do you do this, or whatever.
Absolutely. And like the advent of social media, it's great in the fact that, like, even if you've been out of school for a while, or you weren't, you know, you didn't have like a core group of friends in animation school, there are tons of other artists and animators on the internet who are in the same boat as you. And that was one thing that I really learned when that original video went kind of viral, was that there were so many comments from people who were exactly like me, who had either been laid off or were looking for work or were in another creative industry and feeling stuck. And so I think also just like sharing what you're struggling with, or even just sharing your art and getting your art out there, you never know who's going to see it. You never know who's going to maybe come into your DMs and be like, hey, you're exactly what I've been looking for. And you never know what could happen.
Okay, yeah. This might have been your first kind of bout, but hey, that's a good thing, really, because it makes you learn a lot more about how things work.
Silver lining to getting laid off was that I would never have had the courage to start out on my own if I hadn't been kind of shoved out of the proverbial nest. Because I was comfortable, and I think that a lot of people get that way. You're comfortable, you have the things that you complain about your studio, but it's consistency and stability, which are really comforting to have. But as soon as I didn't have them, you also kind of realize like how tenuous that your grip on that is, and being able to have the freedom to pick and choose what you want to work on is really, really cool, and something that I kind of had decided, yeah, well, I'm an animator. My job is to animate what somebody else wants me to animate, and kind of my career is helping somebody else's creative dream come into fruition. And now it's kind of like, well, what do I want to do? What is my creative dream? What creative products do I want to work on? And so that's exciting, and something that I would never have done if I hadn't gotten laid off. So little silver lining at least.
Yeah, and continue success and just keep, doing what you're doing. I guess you're on the right path. So, well, that's great. Well, I want to thank you for coming on Animateducated and, letting us know, seeing some of your work and finding out who you really are and all that stuff. And yeah. So
Thank you so much for having me. I was truly thrilled when you reached out, and thank your student, whoever they were, that sent you my video.
okay, I definitely will do that. So, well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Julia McIntyre, the Bookish Animator. You can find more of her work on YouTube or Instagram. And if I just want to also let you guys know that we're having a Halloween episode coming up, and every year I try to contact someone from the dead. And so this year, I'm not going to tell you who it is, but you'll have to tune in and see. It's going to be quite interesting to see that. If you enjoyed this interview in any way, you can press that button right there to subscribe, or you can scroll down to other interviews below, or you can take a look at these videos here, and I'll see you next time on Animateducated.